This is R1 and 3 Autoethnography with your host, Steven. On today's episode, we have Arlene back, and we're going to be looking at how her experiences have affected her relationships with people. On this podcast, we talk about our lived experiences with mental illness. So before we get started, you got to know that we are not medical professionals, and you should see your doctor if you're concerned about your mental well-being. So since Jesus Christ. So do you have any updates for us since the last time we talked?
Hey, Steven, you're feeling nervous today?
I'm very nervous.
I am too, but hey, you've got to push past it. So you kind of gave me a roundabout some questions that you wanted to talk about today. And so I guess one of the questions you were asking me is about ADHD and parenting. And man, you really got me thinking on that one. And it was very interesting, I think, because as we know, our studies shown that ADHD is hereditary. So the chances are, that you pass it on to your kids. And I think being that I wasn't diagnosed until I was 36 years old, and had been raising my kids for quite a few years already, that it was a lot different. And I look back at parenting now, and there's a lot of things that I wish I knew raising them. A lot of, I think I felt a lot of pressure on myself to not to screw them up for, plenty of reasons is, coming from the trauma past that I have. I knew that I didn't want them growing up in an atmosphere like I grew up. So I really had to change things from there. They talk about kids with ADHD, how they need routine, and I think kids in general need routine. And so, when you have the ADD and as a parent, you're out there and out here and, squirrel, that kind of thing. It's hard to really have those boundaries for your kids. But I definitely started, them from a young age, trying to have those routines and that, which I think helped me, but also helped them grow. But I had talked about in our previous podcast about how I grew up in a family where, kids were seen and not heard, but I wanted to give my kids a voice. I wanted to, they would always, I wanted to make sure that they felt free to speak and that. And I really encouraged them to speak up for themselves. That was a problem that I had in my childhood, was not speaking up. And, even as an adult, my parents kind of had to come and fight my fights for me. And I felt so, I don't know, little when, I'm a grown adult and, my parents have to step in. And so, once the kids were old enough to start talking, you go to a restaurant and I would make them speak up and, order their stuff themselves. If they wanted ketchup, ask the waitress, stand up for yourself and really ask for things that. And so, like I said, as I was trying to do things a lot differently than I had.
How do you think that affected your kids?
I would like to say that it probably made them stronger people. I hoped that they would have a little bit more self-esteem and give them some self-confidence in that, being able to stand up for themselves. And, now that they're grown adults, I can see that. And, there's days where I smack my head and I go, oh my God. And then there's days where I'm so proud of them that they have spoke up for themselves and are fighting for what they believe in. And, that makes me very proud as a parent.
Right. You mentioned earlier that you felt different as a parent. What did you mean by that?
Again, I go back to, I wasn't, you see all these moms, they're making cookies and having the kids sleepovers and things like that. I wasn't that mom. I didn't like that chaos, so to speak, in my house, and you learn later about why that was. But I just felt that there's a lot of times that I failed as a parent, or I wasn't up to par like the other moms were. Yeah, it was. And so then you kind of get down on yourself and beat yourself up over that.
Do you think that was because you were a bad parent or because of your mental illnesses that you didn't know of?
I don't think I was a bad parent by any means. I want to believe that I wasn't a bad parent, and my kids, have thrived, and, I think, they have issues, but again, who doesn't? But I think it probably was, the misdiagnosis, of the bipolar or the undiagnosed ADHD, right? Is that, that's what made it a little bit different for me.
So how old were they once you got diagnosed with the proper diagnosis?
They were 10 and 11 or 11 and 12.
So it must have been a few years until you realized that there was all this going on.
For sure. And I didn't know any better. Like I said, it was when I went to university, the kids were 5 and 6, I think, when I started university. And in between classes at university, I would go to work. And then I would, go back to class, and then I would leave school and go get the kids, and, we would go home and they'd have snacks, and then we get supper and they played and everything like that. And my life was constantly go, go, go. And those hits of dopamine, I guess, is what it was, right? And if I stopped to think about the stresses and everything like that, I probably wouldn't have continued. And so, like I said, I just went, during university and just pushed myself. And I think that's how I was maybe able to deal with it.
Right. So do you think that had some challenges for your kids, or presented some challenges for your kids?
Oh, for sure. I can see that. There's, I think, the undiagnosed ADHD, the low self-esteem in myself, the randomness of my thoughts, it would affect them for sure. I guess I, haven't really talked to them about, much about, my ADHD and how it affected them. And I guess maybe that's a conversation that I also need to have, that's, how did that affect them?
So where are you guys now in the present?
It's been interesting because, of course, then once I was diagnosed, I could see that my kids had it as well, and tried to get, help for them throughout high school. And it's hard to try to teach kids that it's okay to be different, because they, you just really want to fit in, and knowing that you're different, that's not something that, especially in high school, that they didn't want to be, singled out and, labeled different. But I had wanted them to be the best people and achieve the best things for them, because I realized that I didn't have that opportunity. And so I really, fought in school for them to be able to have extra time writing exams and such. We've gone through our struggles, especially my daughter and I guess we're both a lot alike. And the struggles came probably early in her teen years, if not, hitting puberty. I think I got on her case about things that I wanted her to be better than me. And, it sounds crazy, but so those things that I couldn't control in myself, or I wanted to push her to be better than me. But little did I know that, she had the same thing. And so the same struggles that I had with growing up were the struggles that she was having, and which created a lot of friction between us. We've gone not talking because for quite extended time, because again, I want the best for her, and I want the best for both of my kids, but I see I see me in her, and I don't want her to make those same mistakes. But today we're building a relationship, and I'm, like I said, as I'm coming more to terms with my diagnosis and what the extent of, what I can do and what I can't do. And, I realize that they have to make those mistakes for themselves, and it's a part of, growing.
So in a way, being protective of them was almost like you trying to live through them, if that makes sense?
Correct. Yes. Because of the trauma in my past, I vowed that none of that would ever happen to my kids. And so, yeah, you're right, it was kind of like I wanted a do-over, but, realizing that I could protect them from certain things, but there's certain things that, they have to learn on their own.
Do you think that was one of the causes of that friction between your daughter?
Oh, very much so. And, even so today, like I said, I see the similarities are just crazy, from the fickleness of, job to job, or the relationships. I see the similarity and the patterns. And I guess I would rather them not get hurt, or get, her have that low self-esteem that, I've suffered from.
So could you kind of see some of the same stuff in your family members?
Oh, now for sure. Yeah. Again, hereditary. So I look back on my childhood and, now adulthood, and it's funny to see the similarities in, my siblings that I think they've tried to hide, or, we try to hide and not show it, not being present. But I laugh because, my dad it was chaos in his garage and everything like that. And so I grew up around it, and I think it's hilarious. And, my dad couldn't find this tool or that tool, which is, what I go through every day is like, where's the keys, everything like that. And, like I said, it's not all doom and gloom. ADHD is, it's pretty comical if you really some days look back at yourself and go, oh my God,
Yeah. So do you think that kind of helps you empathize with some of your family members?
Oh, for sure. But on the other hand is, I guess, I'm quote unquote maybe the brave one, or who knows whether it's brave or stupidity. I'm the one who's willing to talk about it, willing to accept the diagnosis that there is something wrong with me. Growing up, you're supposed to try harder, and and that was something that other kids had. That wasn't you. And you had asked me about last podcast about, could I see it in childhood? And, after I go back and I look at some of the crazy things, and I go, okay, so like, I thought everybody was like that, one thing is that, I'll, on my pant legs, if I'm sitting there, I'm writing letters or I'm writing numbers, keeping my brain going, the whole, you can't sit still, constantly shifting in your seat. Those were all there, but you just, like I said, I thought everybody did that. I didn't think that anything was different.
Right. I had a question, but I just lost it. So do you know if your family has gone to get a diagnosis or anything of the sort?
No, I think that's something that is faux pas. It's not something that is talked about. It's, like I said, is now that I've been diagnosed and, I can see things in people, especially, once you start to know what are the signs of ADHD, you see those things. And, I'm willing to accept that, I'm different and that, I need help. But I think the family members, they're not willing to accept that. They don't, want to be, just not something that they're willing to do.
Yeah, it's like something that you wouldn't talk about in your family.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to talk to about your family?
No, I think I think the last podcast said enough, and it's my family is uncomfortable with what I talk about. I guess I'm not. I'm at that place in my life where this journey is about me. This isn't about anybody else, and these are the things that I'm going to talk about, whether they like it or not. And this is who I am. This is who you get, and this is me.
Yeah. So moving on from family, I know that we covered this briefly in the last podcast, but I want to talk about your friendships growing up and now. How do you, or what do you think the impact was of your experiences in some of your earlier friendships?
I don't think that, I think it's, been part of my quirkiness, right? And I think, the friends that I've had early on, that was a part of our friendship, right? Friendships weren't hard when I was younger. I find that friendships are a lot harder now that I'm older. I'm not, and maybe this, it's, case of ADHD, or it's the trauma, the PTSD, the social anxiety. It's really hard to make friends nowadays. But at the same time, I think that I've always had a hard time being friends with women, which is really odd. Going back to my job here, being a barber, is I did, unisex hair. I did both men and women, their hair. But I quit doing it because I thought I lost my passion for doing hair. And it just turns out I didn't have the attention span to sit with women throughout, colors and everything like that. And this way, men sit in my chair, they're in there for a half hour. We have a visit, we, kind of shoot the shit, that kind of thing, talk and have meaningful conversations, but it's a half hour. I get, it's again, like that hit of dopamine. It's something new and I get through it. And so I find that friendships with women are really hard for me. Because it's a lot of drama too sometimes. And I think I've lost a lot of friends over the years because of that. And I don't know, I just, like I said, I seem to connect more with men just because, men tend to be like it more blunt. Women, like to, be soft and gentle, and I'm not that. I'm like a, bull in a china shop. I'm, just come barreling through, that kind of thing. And I think it's overwhelming for some people to have me in their life. Yet, in my early 20s, I was, I would have friends saying, "Oh my God, my friends have to meet you. You're so funny," and everything like that. Because to cover up, first of all, the pain, and the ADHD, you become kind of the class clown. And so I can make jokes like nobody can, right? And I can make myself the butt of jokes, so it kind of deflects from who you really are and how you're really feeling. And a few years back, I learned that I don't need to deflect anymore. This is me, I'm going to have good days. I'm going to have bad days. But more so just accepting of myself and, that there are those days.
So was it a conscious choice for you to not be friends with women?
I don't think it's been a conscious choice for sure. It's just that I think I hate to say it, but maybe I'm off-putting to a lot of women because of, how I speak my mind, how I am, just blunt. I don't know. I think a part of it is, and again, I just realized this was, I don't feel my age. And I'm learning that with people with ADHD is that it's almost like we're immature. And, like I can, like I said, as I still crack jokes, oh, that's what he said, or that's what she said, and they could be highly inappropriate, but I'm still going to say it. And I think that, like I said, is, age-wise, I'm 48, but mentally I feel like I'm in my 20s still. And so I think I don't act my age a lot of times. And so then it's hard to make friends with people my age.
So you think it was kind of damaging to yourself when you were being the class clown rather than kind of expressing who you are now?
I don't think it was damaging. It got me through those times, right? And I still like to be the class clown, at work. And I still, I'm one to make fun of myself and to joke, but I'm doing it more consciously now. It's not something to cover up. I'm accepting of me, and I joke around about my ADHD, and like I said, I think we do things that will get us through these certain periods of time. And I don't think, it's not that I wasn't being true. It was just that was what I did at that time.
Right. So you don't think it would have contributed to something like low self-esteem? Or do you think it was caused by lower self-esteem?
Oh, I think it was caused by low self-esteem, right? So, to cover that up, you tell the jokes, and so then people, don't see that low self-esteem. They just see the funny, crazy person that you are, and you're the life of the party. And there's days where I still am, but again, I'm more aware of who I am now. Right.
Because it's easier to make the jokes about yourself rather than have someone make them about you.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
So because of that low self-esteem you mentioned you had earlier and some of your experiences, did you find that you would keep toxic friendships in your life?
Very much so. I was just thinking about that I had a friend, quote unquote, I don't think you could call him a friend.
Yeah.
Anyways, when I was in university and I went in to get a surgery. And anyways, I had given him, I trusted him, he was my best friend, or so I thought it was, he was, and gave him my card to, get some money out for me, my bank cards, while I was, in the hospital, so I could have some things while I was in the hospital. And, well, he bounced checks. Wrote checks and put them in my bank account and bounced them. And again, being a single mother and going to university and having 2 kids, he seen the perfect opportunity to take advantage of me. And it's been like that, is, having toxic people because of the low self-esteem. You're willing to accept, kind of anybody who, would, I don't know, show you attention or, that kind of thing.
What led up to that point where he started taking your money?
Again, people will tell you what they want you to know, right? And so I felt bad for him, the family didn't trust him, and, the exes didn't trust him, and so on and so forth. But, he showed me that, or the side that, he wanted to show me of being the good person. And so, I trusted people, and, over the years I've trusted people and have gotten hurt, because that's a part of the people pleasing, having ADHD is you're trying to please people and doing what's best, for them, but you never take into account what's best for you.
Mm-hmm. I remembered in the last episode, you mentioned something about how children with ADHD are more vulnerable to forms of abuse and whatnot. And I can definitely see how that would affect your friendships, right? Because you would be a lot more vulnerable, you would be a lot more trusting. Mm-hmm. And from there, you would let a lot more toxic people into your life.
Very much so, yeah. And that's what I said. And especially when you haven't been raised to know those boundaries, or, been raised or educated on it, that this, those are bad things, and, those people shouldn't be in your life. And so again, going back to parenting, I really tried hard, to teach my kids is, if you're getting into trouble by hanging out with a certain group of people, you need to make better choices. And again, it's trying to teach my kids from my mistakes, right? Or,
Were there other instances of these toxic friendships that you can remember?
More toxic relationships than friendships. I've been in horribly toxic relationships, and especially when you don't have any self-esteem, and then you attract more so the predator and that person who is really going to drive home that make sure that you don't have self-esteem. And that was kind of my relationship with my kid's dad. Is it was the verbal and mental abuse, and then I would feel like, well, nobody else is going to love me. So then, I would go back to him and again and again and again. And until, I finally got the nerve up to finally say, I can't do this anymore, but it's been a continuous throughout my life. And maybe I think probably a lot of it has to do with the ADHD, but I think it has to do with, the sexual abuse, right? Is that I was never ever taught healthy boundaries with men. And so it just, it's increased my vulnerability to bringing more toxic people into my life. I think what's happening now is that I've, stopped trying to people please, which makes people uncomfortable. And they distance themselves from me now that, with them being uncomfortable, right? Because they always knew what to expect from people pleasing Arlene. But once she realized that it wasn't all about pleasing people, they start to leave your life, that kind of thing. And, you just fall short in a lot of things in your life, by, with the ADHD. I think I'm learning to grieve about what I could have become had I got diagnosed sooner. I'm sad that it took me so long. Now, like I said, is at 48, I'm wanting to change careers, the possibility of changing careers, but there's now I fear failure. And I've never been one to fear failure, but now as I'm getting older, it's, scared of failing. And so it stops you from doing a lot of things, right? And I think I said again, is that comes back to, relationships and friendships.
Yeah. So how do you think those toxic relationships have an effect on you today?
It's been a learning experience. I try to, learn something maybe about myself each time, a friendship, relationship fails. I think one of the things, I want to talk about the more women that are being diagnosed in later years now. It's becoming so common now that women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s even that are being diagnosed is because women have always been known to multitask, right? And, cleaning the house and, caring for the children and working and everything like that. And now more and more women are being diagnosed with ADHD. And again, just learning more about it, one of the things that I've learned is about RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a real eye-opener for me. That, and for those of you who don't know, is people with ADHD, we have a huge fear of being rejected, being criticized. And that's where, part of that people-pleasing goes in. We set up really high standards for ourselves, and then we feel like failures if we don't achieve them. And I think, part of me for, the childhood trauma has made it worse, being criticized. It hits you to the core of you, and, it can knock you down for days, and you wonder, what could have I did differently? Whereas, somebody who doesn't have that problem, they're like, oh, okay, well, I can't please that person. I go on. But, we kind of, we keep going back and, well, what can I do to please that person? And, I'm having problems, I was having problems with my parents is, I wanted to please them. And, you talking about it is, we really want to please these people, and we go above and beyond. But at a certain point, you have to realize that no matter what we do, we're not ever going to get that from them. We're not going to be, told we've done a good job or that is. And so it's been really hard, especially when the people that you want to please the most is your family, your parents, your family, that kind of thing. That rejection hurts the hardest, which has, again, I've done a lot of self-sabotaging in my life. I set myself up for failure, or if I even think that I'm going to fail at it, well, why try? That kind of thing. I used to get angry a lot. Like, again, the growing up, or, raising the kids, there was anger that I didn't know why I had it, right? And again, nowadays, I rarely get angry. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think sometimes anger is a good thing to have. It's, showing, your emotions, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And do you think that anger was kind of related to rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria? Or?
For sure. Anybody who rejects you or, you can't please, right, is then that just, it sends you down, just in a spiral, and that's all you can think about. And so you think about that, and then you get angry, and, it's, yeah. And I think a lot of it is, again, I didn't understand why I was angry. I didn't know. I just knew that I was angry, but I didn't know why.
Where did you direct that anger?
The yelling at the kids. I think probably that was the biggest one. I, again, coming from the childhood where, a punishment was harsh. I didn't want to do that to my kids, so I guess yelling was the way, rather than, physically punishing them, which again was just, you get so frustrated, and that's where I think I channeled my anger, was that way.
How did you feel after you let out that anger and after rejection? Oh God,
just horrible, like I felt, again, it's my kids that I probably took it out on, again, the people who are closest to us. And, I felt like a failure as a parent. And, and that's what I said is it's, it was just an up and down thing. You would go through that. And just like I said, it was just feeling like a failure as a parent.
And were you like thinking about directing that anger at the time, or did it just kind of swell up so much that you had to let go of it?
I guess, probably that it would just, you can only stuff certain things down for so long before it's going to blow. And I think, that's a part of, with relationships is you keep overlooking things and keep overlooking things. And no, this is just me. It's, and you just keep stuffing it down. And then one day you can't stuff anymore, and you just have to let it all go.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Do you have an example of rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria with your friendships?
Probably the biggest one was I had grew up with her, and our kids, she had a daughter 1 year older than my son. And so, she was here in Saskatoon, and we grew up together. And then, our kids would play together, and we were in each other's lives like 24/7. We could call each other at 2:00 in the morning, and we would be there. And, she was my rock, and she ended up meeting somebody in Scotland, and she moved to Scotland. And so I went over there a couple of times, and the last time that I had went over there, that would have been in 2006, I guess. And I brought my boyfriend at the time. He came there with us, with me, and me and him, we went off and we did our thing. And in the meantime, he proposed to me. And so I go back to Glasgow, and I'm so happy. And, I show her this ring, and she was like, "Why would you do that?" She says, "It's not going to work." She says, "This was a bad idea. This is wrong." And I was like, okay, but, I just took it for that, and okay. And, I thought about it. And so come back here, and of course, start planning a wedding. And I wanted her to be my maid of honor, and asked her to be my maid of honor. And she said, "Why would I come and stand up for something that I know is going to fail?" And that was basically the last conversation that we had. And it's, like I said, I can remember it like it was yesterday. So, talk about rejection, and regardless, I think, of whether she was going to be right or not, I thought that as a friend, that she would have been there for me. But,
Did you kind of internalize that?
Oh, very much so. And so then, when somebody does that to you, you fight so much harder to prove them wrong, right? And that happened before, with an ex-boss, before I started up Offside, was, when I told her, I went to give her my 2 weeks notice, and she said to me, she says, "I hope you fail." And that's, those words in my head, between that, and my mom, you're never going to amount to anything. You're no good for nothing. And so then you just go into overtime to prove those people wrong. And in the meantime, you stress the hell out of yourself and beat yourself up, right? You're going to prove them wrong.
Did you believe them?
Still believe it to this day. You fight that evil little voice, in your ear, is that you're not going to amount to anything, right? And therefore, I'm scared to, I guess, I'm more scared to succeed, because I've been told that, you're a failure and that. And so I believe that I deserve that I'm not meant to achieve great things, and that stops me from doing it. And I try to get that out of my head, but it's still, like I said, it still follows me around.
So it almost feels like there's weight on you if you're doing something new where you could fail? Yes.
Yeah. And so basically I don't want to try anything unless I know that I can succeed at it. I like paddle boarding I was like, I have good balance. I can try this. And the first time I tried, I was up and at it and just went on my way because I knew that I could be good at it. And, the same as, somebody took me to the gun range for the first time and bam, like I did it. But if it's something that I'm pretty sure that I can fail, I don't want to try. And really shitty, because you lose out on so many experiences because you're scared of failing. You're scared of rejection. And, that's, I try to, push my shop to the next level. But again, I'm scared of what is going to come next.
What are some of the things you would be afraid to do?
Going to the gym. I know it's really good, for especially people with ADHD. But I'm scared I'm going to be judged there. A part of my, the other thing that I do on the side is educating for, in hair and speaking in front of people. Oh, that's scary. And again, I just feel like people are judging you, and I'm scared to be judged because that's been, my life. And so I really want to do that, and I really want to, get up and speak and those kind of things. But again, even podcasts, I've talked about doing a podcast, but I'm scared of failing at it.
Yeah, that's fair. How does it, feel when you start thinking about doing some of these things?
Kind of get sick to my stomach, get anxiety. The panic attacks set in. Especially, the social anxiety, is, oh my God, I have to talk to people. I have to see people. And that's really hard because, like, at work, people come into my shop. This is my safe place. This is where, if you don't like it, then don't come back, kind of thing like that. But when I'm out of here and I have to go out to do new things or go to a new place, that the social phobia, the anxiety just is like overwhelming. And so your head is so wound up that you can convince yourself not to do it and find reasons to not do it.
Yeah, like you would have a better time just avoiding all that.
Yeah. Sitting at home by yourself, which again is, you're not doing yourself any good, but again, scared of, making a fool out of yourself in public or that kind of thing is, and it's funny because a lot of people who know me, especially through work, is they don't see that because again, is they're coming into my space and I'm so comfortable. And so then, they want to, okay, well, let's go do this. And it sounds cool and everything like that. But again, I'll just lock right up.
And I could definitely see how that would affect friendships if you are, canceling on people or just not willing to do these new things with them, right?
Yep. You just become a flake and then they quit asking you. And then, so they quit asking you. There goes the rejection, again. And like I have a friend and she's been asking me for probably the last 6 months to do something. And we still haven't met up. And it's, like I said, I feel like a flake and I don't like feeling like that. But again, I don't even know how to explain it sometimes.
It's almost like, well, I can't explain it for you, but in my experience, it's almost like the longer you put something off like that, the scarier it gets.
Right, exactly. And that's like you, the first time, we talked about doing the podcast and you just said to me, okay, let's just do a date and a time. That way, we're committed, and that was kind of, like I said, is at work. I have a schedule. And so I'm committed to that. But if I don't have a schedule that I have to be, then it leaves it all open for to not do it.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost scary to do things impulsively now as an adult with friendships, because it's like, I don't want to make a fool of myself. And you mentioned before when I was getting a haircut that you were almost overwhelmed at some public places, right?
Oh, yeah. And I'm not me. And that's what I said is that's the hard part is, I'm part of a local group who, well, of course, during COVID, we haven't been able to, but we get together every quarter and we donate money to different charities. And so all the business owners, we get together at this gathering, and I feel like such a misfit and that I don't belong and that these people are better than me. And, I can convince myself of all of these things and I go to it, but again, I know that I'm not being true to myself and I'm putting on a facade by going there. And that makes me sad that I can't just be me.
Like, what do you mean you can't be you?
Again, a lot of it is women, again. So I just feel like I can't, be the jokey Arlene. Again, I feel like I'm immature, compared to all of these people. And so, these people are, refined business owners, and I'm the class clown who just happens to be a business owner. And so I just don't feel like I'm on the level of, playing field like they are.
So it's kind of like comparisons and shutting yourself down, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well,
speaking of rejection and doing new things, how did you feel when I asked you to do this podcast for the first time?
You know what? I was excited, because again, I think we're doing it here in my shop. So again, you're coming to my comfort zone. And we're talking about something that I know I live every day, right? So it's not scary for me. And you make it easy, you make it comfortable. And so that's a part of it. And again, I feel like I'm being authentic when I'm here with you, and I'm not trying to, put on a facade, and I'm not trying to show you somebody who I'm not,
Mm-hmm. I can admit that I was terrified when I asked you, and I almost canceled. And I bought these brand new microphones and all this setup because I was like, holy shit, she's going to comment on the setup. She's not going to like any of this, or she's going to not want to talk.
See, and that's just me. I think anybody who knows me is I'm the least judgmental person that there is, and that's what I said is, it's a saying that I say all the time is, nobody's walked a mile in my shoes and I haven't walked a mile in your shoes. So I appreciate everybody's experience, and I never ever judge anybody by the way that I may make fun of you, of course,
Yeah.
The way you dress or the way, whatever. I may make fun of you, but I'm not going to judge you. And I think that's been the basis of my business and the success that the business has had, is that, I'm accepting of everybody. And again, I think because of where I've come and what I've gone through, that makes me probably even more compassionate, for people in those situations.
Mm-hmm. So can you kind of direct that compassion towards yourself if you start to get wound up?
I'm trying to learn what makes me happy and what I can to, I guess, soothe myself, which has brought me, a lot of people don't like spending time by themselves and, in the loneliness. And, I know that was one word that you had used was, and I can honestly say I'm not lonely. And I don't fear being alone anymore. I used to fear that a lot, but I don't fear that. I really welcome it. At the end of a busy day, I want to go home to my house and have no noise. And that's, to me, that's taking care of myself, is learning that there's certain things that I can control, and to enjoy those and just kind of relish in it.
How did you get to this point?
I think it's just a matter of getting older and knowing what I want and what I don't want, what I'm willing to put up with and not. And again, this goes, to relationships to family to friendships. It's been, like I said, it's been a growing experience, you know, and a lot of times I would put myself in uncomfortable situations and not enjoy it. But because somebody I was with, or they wanted to do that, and I didn't, but I went along with it, and now I'm just learning to say no more. And that's, I think, been the key, is just saying no.
Yeah. Do you think it would contribute to the loneliness if you were kind of being a different person, I guess?
Maybe, you know, but like I said, because there's so many people in my life during the day, you know, within a day, you know, I see between 16 and 18 people in my chair myself, right? That's not including, you know, people that are sitting in the other chairs. And so I get a lot of stimulation throughout the day. And, you know, and I've been lucky, especially during COVID, is that I've been able to, you know, other than 2 months, I've been able to work the whole time. Whereas, you know, there's been people that, you know, have to work at home and they haven't been going into the office, and therefore they don't see people, which has contributed to the mental health, you know, decline. But I've been really lucky because, like I said, I have people that are still coming to see me every day. And so that, you know, I'm not lonely in that sense, of that the loneliness doesn't creep in there because I'm so stimulated during the day.
But earlier in your life, did you kind of fear being alone?
Very much so. Yeah. And that's what I said, is that's, you know, when you would be in a toxic relationship, a toxic friendship, and because you are scared to be alone. And I look back now and, you know, yeah, that was younger me. And it's probably only been about the last, I don't know, 5 years, I think, that I'm really comfortable with that being alone, you know, but it's hard because, you know, again, you know, you don't have those friendships. So then when you do want to do something, you don't have any friends to do it with. So it's kind of, you know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, you know, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot with, on one hand, but I have to go to bed with myself at the end of the day. And so I have to be okay with me.
Yeah. And there's definitely a lot of pressure in the media to be having these extravagant friendships or relationships, but I honestly don't think that's realistic.
No. And that's what I said, is I think I put a lot into friendships in the past and didn't get out what I was putting in. And once I said that I wasn't going to do that anymore, like I said, you find out who your true friends are. And, you know, even to this day, is like, okay, well, it's kind of, you know, a catch-22 is, you know, you're not reaching out, but they're not reaching out. And so if they're not reaching out, you're not reaching out. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And it's ridiculous. But again, is, you know, I think people with, you know, ADHD, again, is if it's not in our sight, we forget about it. And so I know there's people that I probably, you know, I could call up and go see, but again, they haven't reached out. So it's like I said, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm. And with our false sense of time perception, it could be like months or years before you're like, oh, I should probably call someone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's not that we mean to do it. It's, yeah.
What type of attitudes do you have now towards the connections in your life?
I don't know. I think it sounds really weird.
Well, we're weird people.
Yeah. Is that, again, you know, talking about friendships, I guess it depends on what you define as a friendship, right? I have a lot of friendships and acquaintances, you know, here at work, you know, people that I've been cutting hair on for, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right? But am I going to call them up in, a time of need? No. And so I have a lot of people in my life, and they're in my life because I provide a service, right? And it sounds weird that I'm going to say that I feel used, but in a sense, they're getting something out of their friendship with me, right? They're getting a haircut. But I go, you don't see them outside of here. And so it's wonky.
Are you kind of okay with that?
For the most part, yes. There are some friendships that I have built out of this, that I know if I was to close up tomorrow, they probably would still remain in my life. But I would say probably 99%, wouldn't. And, I'm okay with that.
How did you get to this point where you can confidently say that you're okay with that?
A part of it is, kind of, I think you just get to a point in your life where you've been through it all. You've been through so much, and as much as you care what people think, you don't. And I'm at that point where I really couldn't care less sometimes. Is, if you're going to judge me, you're going to judge me. And like I said, I think it's just growth. And I think a lot of this growth come after I was 40. I think up until that point, I wanted to fit in, and I wanted to, there was a social hierarchy, and, you wanted to be able to be in there. But after 40, I think it's weird, because I didn't believe it, but they said, you get a different confidence once you hit that. And I really feel that once I hit that 40, it was like, okay, it's enough trying to prove to other people. And it's more so about proving to myself now.
So is that how you kind of push away rejection now?
Yeah. Yeah. Because, does it still hurt a bit? But I don't dwell upon it anymore. It's, when I was younger, if somebody broke up with you, God, I was heartbroken, and, you almost to the point where you're suicidal, and, you can't go on, and you're never going to find anybody. And then you realize that you're going to go on, and, that life keeps going. And over time, it builds that character in you.
What's your self-talk like now if you feel like you're getting rejected?
It's a lot of, and this is something I've learned probably through therapy, but also through school, is that you can't make anybody feel anything. So I own my feelings now. So, if I'm talking to somebody, I use the expression I feel. And it's not you make me feel this, I feel this way. And I'm owning those feelings, and I'm expressing them. And whether you're rejecting them or not, this is how I feel. I'm learning that I can feel a certain way now. And whereas before, I didn't know how to be angry, and I didn't know how to be, all of these emotions, that they teach you nowadays is you're either happy or you're sad. Those were the basics. And I didn't know that there was all of these overwhelming and everything like that. And so it's taken, like I said, it's taken a long time, but I own my feelings now.
So would you have any advice for someone like my age who, is maybe going through something similar or is experiencing ADHD or any other mental illness?
I think the biggest thing is that it's okay to be not like everybody else, it's a part of who you are. And I think we have to learn to accept ourselves. And I think that's the hardest part is, don't worry about everybody else. That part will come, is learn to accept you and know what, what makes you happy and what makes you sad, and know that all of those are okay to feel.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you'd like to talk about or say?
No, I think that it's, like I said, some days I think it's a superpower that I have. Some days it's a huge hindrance. I learned something really cool the other day, just by accident, is kind of, I think it was dreary the other day, I think on Friday. And so on SiriusXM, I put on caliente music, and, it would make you feel like you're in the Caribbean and everything like that. And so, it's background noise in here. And I came, at the end of the day, I felt so good. And I said to Megan, I said, you know what? I was like, there's background noise on, but I didn't know the language, so I wasn't concentrating on it. So like during the day, like I said, I'm cutting hair and and having a conversation, and I can hear Megan's conversation, and I can hear the TV going and the radio going. And in my head, I'm singing the words to these songs. And so my brain is bouncing all over the place. But the other day it wasn't. And I was like, that's really cool. I learned something about myself, and that's what I said, is every day it's something new, and that I didn't realize that, because so then I didn't stop to sing random lyrics, because that's what I do. I'll stop and I'll do a little dance, or I'll sing some random lyrics because I know the song. And I didn't do that the other day, and it was really kind of neat. And so that's what I said, is I think just learn about yourself and be proud when you do. And that's what I said, is I was pretty impressed about myself the other day, because that wasn't something that I realized that I did, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have any more questions or anything, so it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for recording another episode with us.
I was glad to, and again, if anybody wants to reach out or has any, questions or anything like that, I'm pretty open book. I'm pretty easy to talk to. I said, I think I'm probably one of the easiest people to talk to, again, because I don't judge. And again, especially in my barber shop, right? It's about mental health, and we love focusing on mental health here, and just being really open and accepting to everyone. So that's just kind of how I am.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can have you on again sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
So hopefully you guys liked this episode. Make sure to check out our website in the description and subscribe on whatever platform you're on. You'll also find some resources and references we used for this episode in the description. And once again, we are not medical professionals, and you should see your doctor if you're concerned about your mental well-being. We'll see you next time.